Hey there, before you dive into this video about a story from the Old Testament, I want to give you a heads up. This particular tale can be pretty intense, and it might not be suitable for everyone, especially younger viewers. So if you've got some past stuff that could be triggered by heavy content, maybe sit this one out. Now let's get into the story. It's tucked away in chapters 19 to 21 of the Book of Judges. Most folks have heard about chapter 19, but not everyone sticks around for the rest. I think there are some important lessons we can learn from this disturbing story, and that's what we're going to explore in this video. In the Book of Judges, specifically in chapter 19, we find a story about a man who lived in a distant area of the Hill Country of Ephraim, which is in the northern part of Israel. This man, known as a Levite, took a woman from Bethlehem in Judah as his concubine or wife. It's interesting to note that Bethlehem is in the southern part of Israel. Now here's where the story takes a turn. The woman, unfortunately, was unfaithful and went back to her father's house in Bethlehem, where she stayed for several months. This Levite, still wanting to be with his wife, decides to travel from the northern region of Ephraim to Bethlehem in the south to reunite with her. Upon reaching Bethlehem, the woman's father welcomes the Levite with hospitality. The Levite, eager to take his wife back, repeatedly asks to leave and take her home. However, the father insists that he stays for a bit longer. This back and forth goes on for several days, with the Levite expressing his need to go home and the father persuading him to stay a little longer. After numerous attempts, the Levite finally decides he must leave and expresses his gratitude for the hospitality, but insists on going home. This part of the story emphasizes the tension and the extended stay due to the father's repeated invitations for the Levite to linger a bit more. So after the Levite expresses his need to go home, he and his concubine finally begin their journey. They're traveling from Bethlehem in the south of Israel to the northern region near Ephraim, close to a place called Jebus. As the day is coming to an end, the servant suggests stopping in the city of Jebus to spend the night. However, the Levite decides against it, explaining that he doesn't want to stay in a foreign city where there are no fellow Israelites. Instead, he insists on heading to Jobbah. The servant suggests trying to find a place to stay in Jobbah or Ramah, so they continue on their journey. As they approach Jobbah and Benjamin, the sun is setting, and they decide to seek shelter there. To their surprise, no one in the city is willing to welcome them into their homes. This sets the stage for the unfolding tragedy, as the couple faces the cold reception in Jobbah. In the culture of Israel, showing hospitality was a big deal. So at the end of the day, an old man in Jobbah notices the Levite, his servant and concubine still outside. Wondering why they haven't found a place to stay, the old man asks them. The Levite explains that they've been turned away from other houses in the city. Understanding their situation, the kind old man offers them a place to stay for the night. The Levite is relieved and mentions that they don't need anything except a spot to rest. He says, "Just a pillow for our heads is all we need," emphasizing their simple request. The old man agrees, and the Levite, along with his servant and concubine, spend the night in the man's house in Jobbah. However, things take a dark turn when, in the middle of the night, the house is surrounded by wicked men from the city. They demand the Levite be brought out to them for some unspeakable acts. The old man, shocked by this horrifying request, comes outside and pleads with the men not to commit such a terrible act. To dissuade them, he even offers his virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine for them to mistreat instead. It's a disturbing twist in the story, as the old man tries desperately to prevent a grave injustice. Now, before we delve into the aftermath, let me walk you through what unfolds next in this distressing tale. In verse 25, it's mentioned that despite the old man's plea, the wicked men refuse to listen. Instead, they grab the Levite's concubine and take her outside with them. What happens next is truly heartbreaking. Throughout the night, these evil men subject the woman to unspeakable horrors. She endures rape and abuse until dawn breaks. It's a profoundly distressing part of the story, and this is why I cautioned earlier that this video might not be suitable for younger viewers. This tragic event is something that's difficult to discuss, and it underscores the disturbing nature of the narrative. As they embarked on their journey, Levite and his company reached the end of the day as the sun set. Instead of taking his servant's advice to stop in Jebus, later known as Jerusalem, which was a non-Israelite town, the Levite suggested they stay in a town of the people of Israel. Irony strikes as they choose Gibeah of Benjamin for their stop, the very place where the disturbing incident would unfold. Upon arriving in Gibeah, the group faced unexpected challenges. They were ignored for a considerable time in the open square until an elderly man finally extended an invitation to them to stay at his house. Drawing parallels with a similar story involving Lot in Sodom from Genesis 19, some troublesome individuals referred to as sons of Belial or base fellows surrounded the house. They demanded that the strangers be sent out so they could know them, a biblical way of describing sexual intercourse. Trying to pacify the unruly men outside, the host offered his virgin daughters and the Levite's concubine. However, the people outside rejected the offer. In a shocking turn, the Levite took drastic action by throwing his concubine outside to the violent mob and locking the door. As dawn broke, the mistreated woman was released, collapsing at the doorway. In the morning, the Levite, seemingly indifferent, instructed her to get up. When she didn't respond, he placed her unconscious body on a donkey, and they continued their journey together. Upon returning home, the Levite took a gruesome step by cutting the woman's body into 12 parts and sending each part to the 12 tribes of Israel. He sought justice for the horrific events that had unfolded. So to summarize, in this distressing part of the story, a group of wicked men takes turns assaulting and violating the woman throughout the night. The horrifying ordeal continues until the morning, when, utterly exhausted and broken, the woman manages to return to the doorstep of the man's house where her master is staying. It's a heartbreaking image. She's so weakened and battered that she can barely make it back. As the man, presumably the Levite, wakes up in the morning and opens the door, he urges the woman to get up, but there's no response. The woman has been subjected to so much abuse that she tragically succumbs and dies right there on the doorstep. The man, perhaps in shock or callous indifference, places her lifeless body on a donkey and continues his journey home. The narrative takes an even darker turn when the man, upon reaching home, makes a horrifying decision. He takes a knife, dismembers his concubine's body into 12 pieces, and then sends each piece throughout the territory of Israel. Shockingly, attached to each piece is a letter detailing the gruesome events that unfolded, the abuse she suffered at the hands of the men. This grim revelation sends shockwaves through the tribes of Israel. The other tribes, upon learning of this appalling incident, expressed disbelief that such a horrific act could occur among their own people. It marks a tragic and unprecedented event in their history. Now, as we start reflecting on the lessons from this harrowing story, the first takeaway is a profound one. When there is a lack of responsibility in our lives, there's a strong tendency for us to stray into dark and harmful paths. This tragic narrative serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of such neglect. Let's revisit Judges chapter 19 verse 1, which we touched on earlier. It emphasizes the importance of accountability and being unafraid to explain our decisions. When we're not hesitant to be answerable for our actions, it helps us make better choices. In this mini-lesson, we can see that when people feel they can make decisions without being held accountable, it often leads to poor decision-making. This was the situation in Israel during that time. There was no king, and though there was a law, people weren't respecting or enforcing it. The lack of accountability allowed a culture where individuals thought they could make decisions in isolation without considering the consequences or the well-being of others. The tragic events that unfolded in the story illustrate the consequences of such a mindset. It serves as a reminder of the importance of responsibility and accountability in our decisions and actions. Now, as the story unfolds, it takes a shocking turn that perhaps none of us could have anticipated. Another crucial lesson to reflect on is the importance of treating every human being as an image-bearer of God. In the narrative, we witness a disturbing moment when the host, desperately trying to appease the unruly men outside, makes a startling offer. He suggests that it would be wrong to harm the guest, but instead, they can do whatever they want to his daughter and the Levite's concubine. This reveals a skewed mindset, where this man values the life and virtue of the guest over the well-being of his own daughter and the concubine. It's a stark reminder that we should treat every human being with respect and dignity, recognizing their inherent value as image-bearers of God. This incident prompts us to reflect on situations where individuals may prioritize one person's well-being over another, and how crucial it is to uphold the sanctity of each person's life. Extending this lesson to our daily lives, especially when navigating the internet and potentially inappropriate content, it becomes essential to ensure that we treat others with the same respect and consideration, acknowledging the shared humanity and worth of every individual. This principle guides us towards a more compassionate and ethical approach in our interactions with others. Now, if you're finding it challenging to resist the temptation of watching things online that you know are inappropriate, here's a perspective to consider. Picture every girl you encounter on the screen as someone bearing the image of God, someone's daughter. Imagine if you'd want someone to watch your own daughter engaging in the activities you're viewing. This brings us to the third key point in this video. As we distance ourselves from God, we become more susceptible to engaging in actions we never thought we would. A close look at the Book of Judges reveals a nation gradually turning away from God. It's a gradual shift, and as the people move further from their spiritual foundation, they become increasingly vulnerable to behaviors they likely never envisioned. This pattern serves as a broader lesson about the importance of staying connected to one's faith and values. The more we distance ourselves from God, the more prone we become to making choices that go against our moral compass. Understanding this connection can guide us towards making decisions aligned with our beliefs and avoiding paths that lead us away from our values. The turning point in Judges chapters 19 to 21, especially in verse 21, serves as the culmination of the nation's collective turning away from God. It vividly illustrates just how far the entire nation has strayed from their spiritual foundation. Importantly, this isn't just a historical account. It's a reflection of a pattern that can apply to us as well. Consider this. If we don't maintain a close connection with God, we too risk turning away. Turning away from God isn't just about a nation, it's a personal journey that many of us can relate to. It's when we find ourselves doing things that, just a decade ago, we might have thought were unimaginable. Perhaps someone suggested we could go through a divorce, engage in an affair, get fired from a job due to online activities, or even involve ourselves in substance abuse. The further we distance ourselves from God, the more vulnerable we become to committing these sins. It's a gradual process, and the lessons from Judges remind us of the importance of staying connected with our spiritual foundation. By maintaining that connection, we can guard against behaviors that might lead us away from the values and principles we once held dear. It's a reminder that our choices are influenced by our spiritual alignment, and staying close to God helps us navigate life's challenges with integrity and grace. Unfortunately, the story doesn't come to a close in chapter 19. In fact, it takes a darker turn in chapter 20. What unfolds is a civil war, a conflict between the 11 tribes of Israel against the tribe of Benjamin. The reason behind this intense conflict is the grievous sin committed by members of the tribe of Benjamin against one of their fellow Israelites, an act that has shocked and outraged the entire nation. This civil war adds another layer of tragedy to the already distressing narrative. It reflects the severe consequences of the moral decline and turning away from God that has gripped the nation. The conflict between the tribes serves as a powerful reminder of how our actions, especially when they violate the principles that bind us together, can lead to devastating consequences for individuals and communities alike. The narrative unfolds further, shedding light on the ripple effects of a society that has lost its moral compass. As the narrative unfolds in chapters 20 and 21, it paints a grim picture of a colossal battle between the 11 tribes of Israel and the tribe of Benjamin. The intensity of this conflict results in the tragic loss of thousands of lives on both sides. When the dust settles, the aftermath is profound. Only 600 men from the tribe of Benjamin survive. In chapter 21, a sense of remorse and concern begins to permeate among the other 11 tribes. They start feeling sorry for the tribe of Benjamin, realizing that with only 600 men remaining, the tribe is at risk of becoming extinct. The poignant issue arises because there are no Benjaminite women left for these surviving men to marry, which poses a significant challenge in continuing their lineage and preserving their tribe's future. This dilemma adds another layer of complexity to an already deeply troubled and sorrowful situation. Now, as the story unfolds further, a new predicament arises for the remaining 11 tribes of Israel. They are gripped with fear that the tribe of Benjamin might face extinction. This brings us to the fourth crucial lesson. Every wrong decision we make comes with consequences that we cannot control. The decision to confront and fight against the tribe of Benjamin was a choice made by the other 11 tribes, and now they find themselves grappling with the aftermath of that decision. The Benjaminites, too, must face the repercussions of their own misguided choices. This serves as a poignant reminder that while we can choose our actions, we cannot choose the consequences that follow. Every decision we make carries its own set of outcomes, and it becomes our responsibility to deal with them, whether they are positive or negative. In an attempt to address the dire situation, the Israelites take drastic measures. They go to a clan called Jabesh Gilead, killing its men. Among the remaining 400 women who have never been with a man, they choose to give 400 of them to the surviving 600 Benjaminites. This desperate solution, born out of the consequences of previous decisions, underscores the complexity and gravity of the situations arising from the choices made by both parties involved. Now, let's break down the problem using simple math. There were initially 600 Benjaminites who couldn't find wives due to the tragic events that unfolded. With 400 women from the clan of Jabesh Gilead now being given to them, you might think the issue is resolved. However, a new challenge arises. 200 Benjaminites are left without wives. Here's where the chain of bad decisions continues. The Israelites, faced with this dilemma, decide to get creative with their oath. They had sworn not to give their daughters to any Benjaminite, but cleverly, they find a loophole. The oath didn't say anything about willingly offering their daughters, but it didn't mention what would happen if the Benjaminites captured the daughters. This twist in the narrative reveals the desperate measures people can resort to when dealing with the consequences of earlier decisions. It emphasizes how one ill-advised choice often paves the way for another, creating a complex web of challenges that demand resolution. The story serves as a cautionary tale about the far-reaching implications of our decisions and the intricate problems they can spawn. In an attempt to resolve the shortage of wives for the remaining 200 Benjaminites, the Israelites find themselves making yet another questionable decision. They come up with a scheme, sending a message to the Benjaminites about an upcoming festival and party where some of their daughters will be dancing and having fun. Here's where the plot thickens. While technically the Israelites had sworn not to give their daughters willingly to the Benjaminites, they find a loophole. If the Benjaminites choose to kidnap the women during the festivities, the Israelites can claim innocence and be released from their oath. So they throw this festival, knowing that the 200 Benjaminite men will seize the opportunity to abduct these women while they are dancing. It's a bizarre turn of events, showcasing how one problematic decision leads to the need for another, creating a domino effect of increasingly convoluted choices. The intricate web of consequences unfolds, highlighting the far-reaching impact of the initial bad decisions and the desperate measures people may resort to in attempting to address the challenges that arise. As we revisit this complex narrative, it's crucial to recognize the widespread negative impact stemming from the initial bad decision of the men of Benjamin. While some might argue that the men of Benjamin deserved the consequences, it's essential to acknowledge that many individuals in Benjamin had no involvement in the wrongdoing. In the ensuing battle, countless innocent lives were lost, a tragedy that extended beyond those directly responsible. The people of Jabesh Gilead also suffered losses, and the women from their land were forcibly taken and given to the Benjaminites. Families were torn apart, and the consequences of these bad decisions reverberated across the entire community. Yet, amidst the wreckage, the narrative concludes with a powerful and reassuring lesson, the fifth and final one to ponder. Even in the midst of our most destructive decisions, God extends grace to us. The book of Judges concludes with a glimmer of hope as it recounts how the Benjaminites, despite the turmoil, took as many women as they needed from the dancing girls they had captured. Remarkably, they rebuilt their cities, gave back their inheritance, and over time, each Israelite returned to their tribe and family, finding a sense of normalcy in their inheritance. This ending serves as a testament to the resilience of grace, even in the aftermath of destructive decisions. It reminds us that, no matter how dire the consequences, God's grace remains available for those seeking redemption and restoration. As we arrive at the final verse of the Book of Judges, it encapsulates the overarching theme that echoes throughout the entire narrative. It succinctly states, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what seemed right to him." This verse essentially characterizes and describes the essence of the entire Book of Judges. As we reflect on this powerful lesson, it's a gentle yet firm reminder that our choices matter, and the repercussions can extend far beyond what we might anticipate. Understanding the weight of our decisions encourages us to approach life with thoughtfulness and consideration, recognizing that the consequences of our actions often unfold in ways we cannot predict or choose. Thanks for watching the video, and if you found it informative, please like and subscribe to Time Capsule for similar content. We look forward to sharing more knowledge with you in the future. Until then, take care.